No, you should be fine. I'm extra moving because somebody else is now in the way. But you'll be fine, you'll be fine.
Okay.
Thank you though. Just remember that I'm behind you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Oh, it's working. Do I need a mic? Does it look very serious with the mic?
It looks exciting.
It's exciting.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Sorry for the slight delay in starting, but it's good that everyone is settled in. As I've advertised, we have sponsored free drinks over there. Please don't be shy at any time. Please get yourself whatever you like. Thank you for coming. We're going to start now with the first panel. So I would like to ask the first panelists, Craig and Carolina and Natsumi, to please come and have a seat at the front of the classroom. I just need to find where my clicker is. So please have a seat. We have 2 microphones. And let's see if this works. Any place that you like, there's not too much choice. So anywhere you like. And I'll just make do the brief introduction and then I'll try and sit as well. Does this work? Okay. So my name is Olga Meschenfelder. A lot of you know me already. I am the editor of the Handbook of Fashion Marketing. We've put out a few copies. They are for sale, so please talk to my sales representative over there if you're interested. Some of you who are contributors will already have a copy, hopefully. And I've contributed a few chapters, the introduction, and I just want to give a very quick word about this book. Okay, maybe that white-blue combination wasn't the best idea, but you never know, I'd like something good. So it was for me, this whole process started with a question that underpins some of my research, which is how can fashion business be decolonized and reframed to equip participants with ethical, sustainable, and inclusive skills to partake in and drive positive industry change. So I'm not just trying to create literature for the sake of selling more of the same stuff, but actually drive some system change. And so for that, I contacted a lot of people who I respect very much for what they're doing, either in academia or industry both. And as a result, we have an accessible knowledge source. So a book is something that doesn't live behind a high financial barrier, like a university. So the main building of Westminster is next to us, but to study there, you have to have a lot of money. You can buy a book cheaply, easily. We have 4 sections: society, diversity, luxury, AI, and digital advances. And we have 27 exceptional authors. Now these authors cover the majority of the world. They're from different regions. It's truly inclusive for me, and I hope for you too. So we're covering 5 continents, global majority regions, from academia and industry, and we have people from, I think, about 4 generations, if I counted correctly. So we have early researchers, there's one, I'm going to embarrass you, I'm so sorry, in their 20s. And we have people who are in their 70s who have contributed. I think that's really great. Yes, and each one of us is actively engaging in the topics of diversity, of ethics, of inclusion, of fashion, of marketing from different angles. So you get a different, fresh view. So we are going to start with the panel session 1. So we have 2 sections. The first one covers the first 2 sections of the book, which is fashion marketing in society and marketing in a diverse world. Now, the panelists here, one of them we're still waiting to make it here. She's a little bit delayed. That's Dr. Sharon Hughes. But we have Craig Crawford here. We have Carolina Turner and Natsumi Wada. So round of applause for them, please. Okay, so I'm just going to take my seat as well now. And we're going to start our conversation. So this is just meant to be a friendly talk and a chat, and we'll take questions from you later on as well. So Sharon has contributed a chapter, and I hope when she arrives she can tell us more in her own words of what she's doing. So I will have to skip Sharon's area now. But we have Natsumi Wada, and perhaps, would you mind introducing yourself? Let me just check that it's on.
Hi everyone, my name is Natsumi. I'm from Solid, Japan, obviously based in Japan, and we are basically doing lots of consulting work or fashion work in inclusive or diversity and inclusion sector. And my main role is to collaborate with our industry to make the items or services more accessible and inclusive. And then one of our product or project, we call it project, in fashion. And then we make clothes that's accessible to people regardless of mobility challenges or size differences. And actually, I'm wearing one of our items today. So this is looks like a normal shirt, but then this is made with magnetic button. So with people with mobility issues, some people has got paralysis in the hand, can easily button up and button, close and open. That we do, and we have different selection of clothes that are accessible, and we also have thank you. So this is one of our project we did in 2024, which is the diversity runway, and we had a runway, actual runway in Vancouver Fashion Week, and then we wrote about how we created the runway through harmonized design process, and then we wrote chapter about that. And thank you for having us today, and then really excited to explore more with you guys and talk a bit more about it. Thank you.
Yes, I have, of the contributors, I have quotes here. So this is something that Natsumi wrote. Accordingly, this chapter does not merely focus on the visible outcomes, namely the garments designed and the runway presentations delivered, but rather centers on the collaborative process through which these outcomes were conceived, developed, and realized. It aims to present concrete examples and design principles in response to the question, who decides, how do they decide, and how do they participate? And the chapter you wrote, really with your co-authors, talks about this participatory process when you develop the garments, which is really interesting, I think, to all our panelists and guests. So I was wondering if you could talk just a little bit, give an example of what that participatory process looks like in real life.
Of course. So actually, I wasn't too involved in this fashion project, so I got a message from my colleagues who are in this project. So hope you don't mind me leading it. Is it okay?
Of course, yeah.
So thank you for this opportunity. And when people think about inclusive fashion, they often think about the final outcome, the garment, the campaign, the runway, or the number of diverse models represented. These are important indicators, but our work at Solid started with a different question. Who decides? How do they decide? And who is able to participate in those decisions? Our chapter is based on a project called Diverse Runway. While it may look like a fashion show from the outside, it was actually an experiment in collaborative design. We brought together people with very different lived experiences, including people with disabilities, refugee backgrounds, different religions, sexuality, ages, and career paths. The goal was not simply to showcase diversity on a runway, but to create a process in which people who are often excluded from decision-making could actively shape the project itself. This is why our chapter focuses less on the final garment and more on the process that produced them. A runway can appear diverse while all the important decisions are still being made by the same small group of people. For us, inclusion is not only about representation, it is about participation in decision making. This idea is closely connected to participatory design. The term is often used as a buzzword, but in practice it means moving beyond consultation. Instead of asking people for feedback after decisions have already been made, we invite people with lived experience to contribute from the very beginning. They help shape themes, communication, design direction, styling, and presentation. This approach can sometimes make projects slower and more complex, and it can create disagreement. However, it also leads to ideas and outcomes that would never emerge through a traditional top-down process. As a result, decision-making within SOLIT projects is intentionally shared. This does not mean that everyone decides everything. Rather, it means carefully considering whose perspectives are missing and where decision-making power should be distributed. We believe that one of the most important design challenges today is not only designing products, but designing the processes through which decisions are made. Ultimately, our chapter argues that fashion brands need to rethink what inclusion means. Inclusive fashion is not only about creating adaptive product or designing for disabled people. It is also about creating opportunities for disabled people and other underrepresented communities to design with us. Many brands ask, how can we design for disabled people? We believe a more important question is, how can disabled people participate in designing along us? This is the foundation of what we call harmonized design. We believe inclusion is not about inviting diverse people into an existing process. It is about redesigning the process itself so that diverse people can participate in shaping it. And I hope this answers your question.
Thank you very much.
Sorry for the long.
No, thank you for your colleagues for sending this all the way from Japan in perfect English. I think that's very commendable. And one of the highlights of SOLIT was to participate in the Vancouver Fashion Week. I think you were there as well.
Yes.
What was the experience for you? Because I think you had people of different kind of physical nature on the runway, wearing the clothes. How did you experience that?
So it was first time for me to be in this fashion arena, and we actually brought 6 models from Japan. We publicly, not auditioning, but publicly open for like anyone who want to be a model in Vancouver Fashion Week. So we selected 6 models from Japan who can be amateur or professional as well. And then we had 6 also hired in Vancouver on site. And it was interesting experiences in terms of how actually that Vancouver is really diverse city. So all the models we had is from different background, especially from age as well, and then also like ethnicity. And so like in Japan, lots of models are white models, slender body, but it was quite different in Vancouver. So that was really great experiences we had experienced.
Thank you for that. And this is really interesting. I think it aligns really well with what Craig does. So I will very briefly introduce you as well, but maybe would you mind passing the mic to Craig? So Craig Crawford, I think you're a little bit of a celebrity because Craig actually has a really remarkable history and experience in the fashion industry. But then you told me the story that something happened and you switched to founding this brand. Would you mind sharing a little bit about yourself with the audience and then a little bit about the brand?
Sure. So despite my outward appearance, I'm only 21. I've had a 35-year career in fashion. I actually started as a model. This is what happens when you work in fashion law. I was a designer for The Gap. I was one of 6 people who started Old Navy in New York. I left design behind because I was really interested in the technology used to design, and I had a free hand doing that at Old Navy and introduced digital fabric printing and all sorts of PLM and all these things that people in the industry hate. But I really enjoyed that, and so I helped set up the Digital Fashion Computing Lab at Parsons. I've always had this tango dance with academia throughout my career, and I moved to a company called Liz Claiborne in America in New York, and my team and I were responsible for all systems used to design color, to design fabric, to design apparel, and we were in acquisition mode. And so I stayed there. It was a Gap for 5, and I stayed there for 10 because we were buying new brands. So Juicy Couture, Lucky Brand Jeans, Max here in Europe. So a diverse portfolio. And I started consultancy when I left Liz, and I started with Tory Burch when she didn't have a front door in her store. And then I landed Burberry as a client. I had worked with the new CEO of Burberry, Angela Lawrence, at Liz Claiborne, and so she brought me here. And I came here to lead the digital transformation of Burberry in 2007 when the iPhone was invented, and brands thought we were nuts because we said everything had to come through the phone first. And traditional retail was still struggling with e-commerce. And I would say traditional retail is still struggling with e-commerce and trying to keep up with the mobile consumer and unified retail. So my consultancy helped brands do that when I left Burberry. So I was at Burberry for 7 years working under Christopher Bailey and Angela Lawrence, and we did all kinds of stuff. There was no blueprint for what we were doing, right? It's now kind of the blueprint for what everyone else is doing, and of course are improving on in terms of this digital era and where we are with AI and all that kind of stuff. Anyway. So I continue to work with brands like Hugo Boss. I've done work with Tiffany. I've done work with Masters Fashion. I've done work with Amiri in the United States. The list goes on and on. But in 2020, COVID tried to kill me. Literally tried to kill me. And in March of 2020, I was hospitalized. We didn't even know it was respiratory then. And I was hospitalized for 48 days. I was on a ventilator. I was in a coma for 21 days. And they didn't think I was going to make it. Then here I am. And when I came out of that coma, I'm a firm believer that everything in your life happens for a reason. And I thought, what am I going to do with this? I can talk about universal health care that saved my life, but they tried to crucify Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama for that, so who cares about Craig Crawford? And it sort of dawned on me when I couldn't get into the clothes that were sent to me, and I couldn't get out of the clothes that I finally could get into. And my occupational therapist said, well, we know you need an elastic waist. We know you can't operate a drawstring. You need a fly. And I'm like, what do you mean I need? All my life, I've been in fashion. And it was always the consumer's fault. You're not then enough, lose some weight. You don't have enough money to afford it. Just don't buy so much crap. Buy ours instead. The arrogance of the brand, and I was very much part of that. And I thought, oh my God. There's a whole section of society who can't get up in the morning and express themselves, right? It's really important. Every single one of you in this room picked out what you wore today. You were coming here, you wanted to look nice, you wanted to be professional. It's hot outside. You wanted to be summery. You had a choice, and you picked from a wardrobe. But many people living with disability or atypical body morphology don't get a choice. They get put in whatever fits best. How do you go out and be your best self if your clothes don't fit? You don't get a choice, right? And so that's why I started Differently Enabled. And so we started in 2020, in December of 2020. I like to get things done. I get out of the hospital and start a brand. Not that fast, but almost. And we've been in R&D mode. I'm very happy. I think there's some things that we'll show here, but very happy to talk to you through some of these. So Sam and Catherine were some of our first brand champions. And I was very interested to hear your story about the runway, because we did a runway show in 2022. And we don't make inventory, right? We use dead stock clothing. We use technology to extract from images and body scans and measurements of the consumer. We meet with the consumer and we co-create. So Sam and Catherine were two of our first brand champions, and the reality is they're a married couple. I've never met anyone more in love in my life than these two, and they have been working with us ever since we started. And when we did this runway show, the organizers said, well, where are your clothes or your models? And I'm like, we don't do that. We make for you. So real people have to walk the runway. And so they did. This is Sam. This is Sam in his biker jacket, and I love telling this story, and I get very teary-eyed about this. But Sam had always wanted. I am going to get teary-eyed about it. Sam, I always do, because Sam always wanted a biker jacket. But living with Down syndrome, mom can't alter that. Sleeps too long. And someone with Down syndrome tends to have a larger neck, shorter shoulders, shorter arms, wider midsection, and you can't alter a biker jacket. And he's vegan. And so we did it in neoprene, and we presented to him right at the runway show. He was so excited. Well, it might be a clip, might not be a clip, but you can see it on the runway, on our website. Just unbelievably living for this coat. Now, that was in 2022. We just kicked off an R&D project with an IAA grant at the University of Manchester last week.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. And we asked Sam and Catherine to be part of that, and we asked them to bring their favorite clothes so we could measure those, because we want to show fit, right? And we want to understand their fit. I almost burst into tears because Sam brought his biker jacket as his favorite thing. And I went to my pattern maker and said, you don't need to measure this. We made it. But it's still his favorite thing. Anyway, that's Catherine. We did a date dress for Catherine because they go on date night. They're champion ballroom dancers, so we did ballroom clothes for them. My shirt I'm wearing now is Sam's shirt in different fabric. And you know, this is the world's most expensive shirt. You can look at the engineering and all of that, and crazy nuts. But we did it for him for dancing. But Catherine was so excited to have a dress for her date night. So that first picture you saw of her was something that she had, and you can see how she looks and feels. And then that little video clip, look at the confidence in that woman. And she cuts her hair like that because she loves Rachel from Glee. I say all the time, I don't care if Grandma wants to look like Hell's Angels and Grandpa wants to look like Hello Kitty. Don't care. They should be able to, right? So, and it's important when I talk about this, that you all understand, I can see you nodding, but fashion is the ability to express yourself. And a lot of brands tell you what you should look like, and we're kind of tired of that, but sometimes we like that, right? Sometimes we want to look that way, and so we aspire to that brand badge. And we're not trying to make DE the Chanel of the future or the Burberry of the future. We're not doing that. We are working to create this platform so ultimately all brands can use our technology to make clothing on demand that fits the end consumer. So no inventory, so a very, very, very different model. And so I'm keen to hear how you're doing because you make inventory. And if you don't sell it, then there you go. Our inventory is the raw material, so it gives us, and because it's dead stock, it works out to be a very different way to do things. Anyway, so there's a very long explanation. So thank you for listening.
Did you want to respond to the inventory question?
So we also doing an inventory project, but we do semi-customized product just because when you do whole customized product, the product price tends to be higher. So we do semi-customized so that all the people with financial difficulties can also afford our product.
Yes, yes.
So, but no inventory, but then semi-customized so that cater to some needs for mobility issues.
Yes, 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 I understand that.
Thank you. Yes, I'm going to introduce Carolina. Am I pronouncing your name correctly? Okay. Carolina next. And actually, Carolina worked with Solid because Carolina is, well, let me go to the slide and introduce you properly. So Carolina China is a fashion designer of a really beautiful brand called Laguna. Am I pronouncing that correctly? Okay, great. That makes bridal and occasion wear, and I'll show you an example in a moment. But she's a Central St. Martin's alumna, which, if you know the fashion industry, that's quite special. Only the best get to graduate. And she's currently completing her MA in Fashion Business Management here at the University of Westminster. And last semester, you worked together with Solid. I brought Solid into the university because there's a fashion marketing and branding module that I teach. And most of the time it's British brands, I'm really sorry to say that, but founded and run by white British men who are bankers and think it's nice to start a sneaker brand. That doesn't have any value other than selling more rubbish. And so, you know, I've worked with Solid before and I've brought Solid in. So I don't know how that experience was for you.
Amazing. It was good. We enjoyed it. It was challenging, but really good.
Yeah, to market something that is, you know, for differently enabled people, that has a completely different concept than just selling more stuff. But I want to talk about what you do in your career. So maybe you can introduce yourself. And I have here an image, and if it works, a lovely video of a runway show, because you show at London Bridal, is it Bridal Fashion Week? Yeah. Please tell about your work.
Hi everyone, my name is Caroline Turner. I started off, as Olga said, I studied for 4 years at Central St. Martin's, and then finishing my degree there, I went on to work in the industry, where I worked for high-level couture brands. I've been head pattern cutter, designer, couture tailoress. You know, I've done everything across the industry. Whilst working in the industry, I obviously met a lot of celebrities, and I dressed a lot of celebrities.
Can you drop some names?
Angelina Jolie, lots of people. Yeah, I've been in some very private moments with some A-listers. Yeah, and it was amazing. But then I decided that I wanted to go it alone. So I set up my brand with the Hughes EdD actually, and they were really supportive. And they took me to America and I did a trade show there. I got some amazing orders from Macy's and it was amazing, but that's another story for another day. And that was a ready-to-wear brand, and it was a really cool brand. But I kind of got seduced into bridal. So I made one white dress, and somebody saw the white dress and they said to me, oh, you know, would you want to sell in my store? And I didn't realise it was one of the best stores in the UK to sell your products. But it was a lady that I knew. So I was like, oh, you know what, I'll come back to you on that. I'll let you know when I've done a few more. So yeah, and then I got a call from London Bridal Week. I don't know how they knew about me, but they must have found me somehow.
That's good.
Thank you, I'll take it. Yeah, but they said, you know, can you do a collection and join us? And I said, well, I've only got one dress. And they were like, well, can you make the collection for like, you know, the next show? And I said, yeah, go on then. And then, because I make everything in the UK, it's really important to me to keep our industry alive. Yeah, I've really fought to keep all the products here. So I got in touch with my factory and I was like, right, I've got a show in 12 weeks and I need these dresses. And they're like, I'm really sorry, but we've closed down. And I was like, oh, I signed up for this show, what do I do now? So I had a chat to some people that work in my studio and we had a meeting and we decided, you know what, we're going to make them all in-house, which we did. And these are some of the dresses from that collection. And when I was actually entering the industry, I realised it was a very kind of fixed standard. You know, there was a standard model, a standard dress size, which I had to meet for this particular show because all of the models are a standard size 8, 64 centimetre waist. And it was really kind of, I felt a bit perplexed by it all. Because I was having customers come to me to make custom pieces, and I realised that none of them were actually this size. And yeah, that's when I really got into custom. Actually, COVID pushed me in the direction as well. So then I just started seeing lots of different people, lots of different body types, different races, and everyone had their own personal story, and they wanted to tell, their own story. They just didn't have this standard body size or skin colour. So I had to kind of think differently and out of the box. So I started thinking about, we have a thing called illusion mesh, like when we make these custom pieces. And I realised that if you were a little bit, brown or different tone, that mesh that you could buy a standard wedding dress in, it wasn't going to suit you. So we introduced the different illusion meshes and even things like bust cups and just the different shapes really. And I worked with so many different types of women, ages as well. My oldest bride, I think she was 72, which is actually not that old. I don't know what was 92, and she's an amazing woman. So yeah, I just have really enjoyed meeting all of these different people, different body types, and I had a small lady as well. I think she was, I don't know how tall she was, but she was a very tiny lady. Very gorgeous, sexy, she wanted to feel good. It was for her prom, and she just couldn't find anything. So when she came to me, I said, "You're in good hands. I'm going to make this work." And she looked incredible. And then I had one of my customers was quite a large lady. She came with her mum, who had put a lot of pressure on her. And I remember when we was measuring her, she said, "Please don't tell my mum what my measurements are." And I looked at her and I said, "Don't worry, your mum's not going to know what your measurements are. You're just going to look amazing in the dress that I make for you." And she did. She looked incredible. So that's my story.
One of the reasons I asked chapter contributors and people who are in the industry to come on the panel today is because I want to understand whether the things we've written about actually apply for someone who works in the industry. Now, of course, you all have industry background as well, but this is the really important connection that I need to see. That what we preach in these books actually is useful in the most positive way at best. So this is really good to hear. And I think, bridal for me, I'm not married, but if I ever was, I always said I wanted a black wedding dress because that's what I think about marriage. No way! No way! Yeah, like Morticia Adams, all black.
A quick story on that. I'm going to be very quick.
Yeah, of course.
When we did the trade show, I had my white wedding dresses and I made one black. And I sent Olivia out into the trade show in this black dress, and it was like,
we need photo evidence.
All of these white dresses, and it was great.
That's cool.
We like
But you just got a special place in my heart. But I think it's really, really interesting because I think, like you said, there's so much pressure for that person looking for a wedding dress from all sorts of people, from themselves, the event, and then, the idea that you actually work with them to make them feel good. And also the body size is shocking that a bridal fashion week does exactly what all the other fashion weeks show. There, I don't see any real color, ethnicity differences. It's one body type, it's one type of bride, it's one age group, so it's very excluded. There is no inclusion. So I think what you're doing is really commendable to change that around and keep it in the UK as well, which is.
We're just launching a whole range for all types of love as well. So,
oh wow, okay.
I'm working on
so
that right now.
Is your couple married, the one who showed? Do they need a wedding dress?
Well, there you go.
Not everyone wants to wear a dress. Some people want to wear a very cool jacket with some trousers, maybe a skirt underneath. We're here to do that. For whoever wants it.
Okay, so if anyone in the audience you know where to go.
The other thing that I just want to comment, I have a big voice, so if you can't hear me, let me know, but then I'll grab our microphone. But the fact that you're manufacturing here, because that's that's what we're doing too. And the fact that your factory went under, I had the same problem. And as because I'm from America, I'm also working with ultimately a launch in America as well, but not now. Everything is here. And the factories that I'm talking to in America, the factory attrition, when someone retires from being a machinist, their children don't come in to do that. They've gone to dental school, or they've gone to law school, or whatever. And so skilling, going back to reskilling people how to sew, the fact that you know how to make a pattern. I work for big brands. Most designers don't know how to make a pattern. Fun fact, when I started at Burberry, they didn't even own the patterns. They sat in the factory, nobody knew what they were, right? So this is commonplace in the industry. Don't ever let go of what you have, because you get the craft and you've attached it to the person, and you're trying to bring this back here, and so am I. And the same for you, you're a manufacturer, right? So it's really important that we look at changing this industry, not just from a perspective of the customer, but the customer wants that, and they want local, and they want craft. People are tired of narrow stitched polyester dresses for $9.99. I mean, okay, they have a place, that's fine. But people also want things. When I was a kid and we went to back to school clothes, I grew up in the countryside, my aunts and my mother would open it up. How much seam allowance is in here? How can we let these out? People don't do that now. They don't look at the end. There's no seam allowance because corporations say that's wasteful. No, it's not. It's not. And that's the sort of thing that we're all, I think, fiercely aligned on here is where's the quality? What's the fabric like? You know, how are we helping the customer feel good about themselves? It's her day or his day getting married, right? Why shouldn't they feel as princess-like or manly or whatever it is that they want when they're walking down that runway, or which in that case is a church, but you know what I mean.
Absolutely, I agree. It's very important.
Yeah.
I wonder if our audience has any questions for you. Would that be okay? Would you answer some questions? Does anyone want to ask or contribute to this? And can I pass the mic to anyone?
I don't need.
You don't need that. Okay, you're
So,
You're like me.
yeah, exactly. You talked a lot, like, I think both of you, not so much you about COVID and the impact of COVID in your business. Going back to the digital side, it's going to become digital. Like, and also I think the Gen Z and now you're going to have Generation Alpha that is coming soon.
Yeah.
So, you're only by 2029, so they're getting older. Your son, yeah, exactly. So, what do you think? What are your predictions? What do you think about the trends, the future trends in the market?
So I have actually looked into this. I think with Gen Z, we did quite a bit of research on Gen Z and the bridal industry and what they might want going forward, and they're definitely in sort of a group that want to tell their personal story, but they like nice things. I don't know how much money they have, or if their parents are buying the nice things for them at this stage, I don't know. But I think it's important that as a designer we cater for that type of customer, a customer that's really interested in telling that personal story, you know, and providing quality. Even though I think there is a bit of a discrepancy around what they want and what they actually buy.
Right.
They couldn't afford.
Exactly. But then we were looking at hiring like wedding dresses, or I mean we had a whole load of plans sort of set out that we could do as designers, that we could cater for this, you know, this new type of customer.
Do you know why I asked you this question? Because I was in discussion with France, and they were talking about these ultra customized things. Because I think the Gen Z are like, I cannot wear your shirt because you were wearing it. So like not like us, we didn't care. But no, I have to have something unique. When I walk, it's all about me. I'm the sun. Everybody. I'm the magnet. Everybody else, yeah. Right. Unfortunately, so I think
we were all the center of our own universes when we were 20. I mean, you know, we were all indestructible. No one was going to die of a pandemic, or, you know, I mean, so I think that just comes with the age. I don't think it's specific. I think the thing that's different is that they've grown up with a phone in their hand. In some instances, they've grown up in social media because their parents put them on Facebook or Instagram when they were babies, right? So some of the, and I go back to universities and lecture, and I'm finding that there's, in some instances, a rebellion against that. I don't want to be in that all the time. And then there's another thing that's happening, and that is, in the digital space, creating garments that can be worn digitally only. So here's my outfit on Instagram, and here's my outfit for TikTok, whatever, right? But they're not really buying those clothes. And the people that I know that have been doing that now for over a decade are actually starting to figure out how can we make some of these things because they actually do want to buy them. So it's a whole different path to market. But at the end of the day, we still want to put on something that makes us feel good, whether we're showing it on social media or whether we're doing it in person. And I do think that we're returning to craft and craftsmanship, how things feel, how they look. And yeah, they don't have a lot of money, all of them, but most of us didn't, right? You know, I mean, I had a friend that worked in advertising, and we would go to the Red Book parties in New York and order 5 beers for them. And then we would all go to the corner because we couldn't afford a beer in New York City, or we couldn't afford a meal out. So you went to these events. I mean, I remember crashing at Tiffany's party as a model in a tux. And I sat next to Amon and David Bowie, you know, and I ate an overall, and I was like, I don't belong here. But they were like, yeah, you look fine, just behave. So you do that stuff when you're a kid. You know, you do that when you're a kid. But you remember that, and then later you go back and buy that tuxedo that you borrowed or whatever. I mean, we did stuff where we're in the digital space where people could design their own or accessorize their own coat. And I remember having someone from Moet call me up because I did some work with them in the marketing space, and they said, I really want to talk to you about Burberry Bespoke. Because, how did you guys come up with that? Because for 3 years, I just kept redesigning and redesigning. And I said, and when you got your first paying job at Moet, what did you buy? My Burberry trench. And I said, boom, we held you for 3 years as an aspirational consumer. So if you do that as a brand, the money comes. The money comes. I think we're just in a really weird place where, A, we're in a startup boom, like the dot-com boom, that everybody who's 15 thinks they can have an idea and be a billionaire. It reminds me of when I was at Liz Claiborne, and we used to get this thing in an email called the Daily Candy. And one day it came through and it said, oh, the greatest diet thing, sprinkle me thin. Sprinkle it on your salad and you'll be thin. And I was like, well, where's sprinkle me rich? I was like, this doesn't happen, right? It just doesn't happen. And yet we fall for it all the time because we want easy solutions to hard things in life. Like earning money, losing weight, staying healthy, staying young. We want easy solutions to that. Not easy. Not easy. And young people want it all. We did too. They'll earn it. They'll learn they have to earn it because we all learned that. But they just have more means to see more things. And that makes it hard for us because they don't care always what goes on the runway, but if they see that dress, you know, from someone climbing a mountain in Peru that's made by a local artisan, where can I get that? And that's the kind of exposure that they had that we didn't when we were growing up. I had to wait for someone to take me into a bookshop to buy GQ, and that's all we had. You know, no one even looks at that magazine anymore. I'm sorry if anyone here from that.
I have a stash, and R.D. Frank's. I don't know if anyone from London knows R.D. Frank's. It closed. This is where you went.
Go ahead, make fun of me.
No, R.D. Frank's. That was a cheer for R.D. Frank's.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much. Do we have other questions from the audience?
Thank you. I was struck by the contrast between the three presentations. I think the second and third, we have very strong personality, very strong individuality, very strong direction, very strong principles and so on. The first one, we were talking about kind of participatory design. I just worry that we lose this individuality, this distinctiveness, by sort of collective decision-making and decision-making by committee, if you like. So do you lose, I get the principles of what you're trying to do, but do you lose out on this sort of distinctiveness, creativity, by collective decision-making? And on the other hand, with any participatory process, there's always a strong voice. You know, and in many ways you need a strong voice to take a collective decision towards an end product. So
I think that's for you, for the participatory design. Well, I was just going to say, that does actually make sense, but I think it's important as an expert there's a balance between understanding the consumer, but then also understanding the craft. So you have to listen to your customers,
Yeah.
but then obviously you have to also be be honest and help them to make good informed decisions around their garments. So it's just finding the balance between creating beautiful products that are responsibly made, but then also listening to your customer and getting that balance.
So when we do project, there's a lot of constraints. Can be budget, can be who's gonna wear, demand, and everything. So we try to make decision based on that time, what is the priority, and if there is a time constraint, and then we try to make decisions based on time. It's not a good example, but when we make clothes, we always make a core target, but then we don't make just for the core target. So when, let's say we set a core target as a wheelchair users, but then if we take only the voice of wheelchair users, maybe there's some mobility challenges, other disability cannot use the items. So we try to make, gather different voices and then feedback. That's how we process. That's how we make clothes. But as you said, it takes long time. There's a lot of going back and forth, lots of trial and error. So when we founded our company 2020, and then there's a seeding time when we created idea. Then it takes 2 years to develop one item or final item. So it takes time to release one garment, but then we have some succeed case studies to adapt to different when we develop new items. And we have some experiences, insights, feedbacks, and then it's more quicker and then easier for us to make a decision. So we learn from what we experience and learn from the past project.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Do you have any other questions?
Can I just add a comment? I was
Sorry.
I think maybe my
Do you want to?
Yeah.
Thank you. I was also a student from Olga, so I also studied about Solid, and one very interesting fact about the brand is that 80% of the consumers are non-disabled people. So I think the fear is about not being a uniform of only disabled people. So it's the main focus of the brand is try to reach comfortable and try to integrate everybody, just to think about of the well-being, So I think you can merge blouse with your own t-shirt or your own skirt or everything. So you cannot you couldn't erase your own style. So you can mix everything, and also taking advantage of the good things that Solid developed.
Thank you. Great.
I just want to ask a question about marketing for a minute, because we're talking about what consumers want and wearing, and I'm finding, I did an article and I interviewed a number of people living with disability, and one of them summed it up beautifully and said, in medieval times when we were born, they threw us in the river. Then during the Renaissance, they left us at the church doorstep. Then medicine came around and we were wards of the hospital. And now society's changing, and we are recognizing that we contribute when we are all working together. And I cite this example all the time, and I don't know how many of you know this, but the electric toothbrush was designed for people with Parkinson's disease and with cerebral palsy, right? What does your dentist tell you to use? The electric toothbrush, right? So if we include people, everybody, we end up with better things, right? And so this idea, and I hate using the word adaptive wear, I hate that, and I hate using the word universal design. But when we do all, because it's become very cliche, but when we do this together and we bring everyone into the design process, when we bring the customers in, we get better product. And in the end, we get something that benefits society. And because they are contributing and coming to work with us and being very proud of themselves and confident, right? But now let's talk about marketing for a minute. And a lot of this book is around marketing and the history of marketing and the ideal, and you all know this. Mad Men said, here's your flaw, my product fixes it. So marketing's based on there's a flaw, our product fixes it. And we're trying to shift that to say, you be you, I'll be me, and this is all great. And yet, some of my customers who maybe are asymmetrical say to me, I don't want to celebrate that because society's not ready to see me like that. So even though I only have one arm, I still want two arms on the jacket and I'll push it up. Or my shoulders are asymmetrical, please put shoulder pads or do whatever, so when I'm sitting on a Zoom call, I look symmetrical. And we are struggling because, not struggling, but it's a new challenge for us because we're getting ready to launch something I can't tell you about in September. And we're talking about marketing. And I happen to have two brand champions who were former models before they became disabled. And if I put them going down the runway on an ad campaign, I'm putting Barbie and Ken right back in front of everybody, right? And I don't want to do that. And yet, at the same time, society struggles, oftentimes looking at something that's asymmetrical or not, but they're conditioned to see. And so I'd be curious to hear from both of you and the room, like, how are we tackling this, right? Because I think we are, little bit by little bit. Do you want the microphone?
Yeah.
I asked a question of you.
I was just going to say as well, like with you, like I think that also comes down to like in the fashion industry, like when people would go to study it, there's a certain type of student, like before that would have been the perfect student. Do you know what I mean? Like, and like even down to like race, like these people, like specific people would be the ones, actually this person could be a designer. We're not used to seeing this type of designer, and then maybe that person having more like leeway maybe in the industry. And I think you experienced some of that when you did go to university, like a lot of adversity and like maybe a bit of different treatment, and it was a bit more effort to get to where you are now. Do you know what I mean? And that then gives, now you're in a space where you can like share different types of models, like, do you know what I mean? To then create that different customer that you're not used to seeing. And I think those spaces, like in universities, like nowadays it's a lot, it's more of an open space. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I do agree. So when, with the training that we receive, like you go in and you're taught to make up a lot, a certain size, and it fits your mannequin, and that's it. So you're never taught, well, when I was, I don't know if it's changed now, but when I was studying, yeah, it was just like, there you go, you're going to make size 8 clothing, and you're going to push them down the runway, and they're going to look like this.
And you're going to grade them.
Of course, yeah. But I do think, like you're saying, as you develop the design and you meet different people, I think it's unique to different people, and realising that we're not all the same.
and that should be incorporated into education.
Yeah, I
believe
believe that.
allow there to be a bit more.
Yeah, I think that would be a great place to start, actually.
We have perfect timing to complete the first panel. Dr. Sharon Hughes has made it, and you can help us. Welcome, Sharon. So this was my beginning slide, but this is perfect because we had. So Sharon has authored. Sorry, I need to stand up because I can't sit forever. My back starts to hurt. That's what happens when you're 40. Okay, diversity in fashion marketing, ethics, body positivity, and inclusion in contemporary fashion marketing. We were just discussing, fashion for differently enabled people, different body types, custom-made clothing, custom bridal wear, and so on. And so questions came up, about exclusion, inclusion, and marketing. But your chapter is so interesting because you have written, I have a quote here, and you have written about you know, the mainstream media, which we were just talking about, so this is perfect because you can comment and explain this. The mainstream media that was showing these ideal women, we talked about this already, you know, they're slim, they're white, they're perfect, they don't have disabilities. It's excluding, but it's a system for gatekeeping. And your whole chapter is about, you know, who are we excluding, why, and who should we include? So I'm going to ask you to enlighten the audience in a summarized way of what you think about this and why it's so important.
First off, let me apologize for being so late. The duties of a mom. Right, I don't know what hasn't been covered, but I think as I came in, I heard a little bit about diversity and things of this nature. And, you know, obviously fashion is all about power and who holds the power. And for years, centuries, whatnot, it was set up to not give the power to those that are marginalized. So we have about 9 categories within, as we define diversity. And that includes age, ability, race, ethnicity, goes on. And fashion, regretfully, has normally set itself up to where it lets you know who's in power and who we should form as the ideal beauty and who is the ideal of what we should be aspiring to. So I think in this particular conversation that I think you guys were having, you know, when we're looking at inclusion, I think we also have to look into all the things. We sort of find fashion sometimes picks up on things. It was, okay, well, you know, we look at black marketing. So how do we market black women? And then that dies out. How do we market, you know, larger body women? And then that goes out. We Vogue Business just posted research, I believe, a few months ago, and it says that we went back to less than 1% of bodies are diverse on the runway once again. Whereas, you know, just around COVID time, everyone was, oh, we have to have this model, that model. Models came out. You know, I follow a lot of extended size or plus size influencers. They're now talking about how, you know, shopping has gone back to they can't find anything to wear anymore, and the sizes have stopped. And so it is the same for race. We also look at age. For a while, you saw some really gorgeous and just lovely women and men of different ages. And now ask yourself, how many of those have you seen recently? How many models have you seen really over, I would say, 25, 30, if that be the case? And that's if you can determine their age, because you can't determine mine. So, I mean, fashion has that way. Now, we have gotten better, and I think I stated that in the chapter, that we are working on it. But there's always room for improvement, because when we don't include, we don't make inclusion sort of a cultural objective, not a cultural, sorry, a corporate objective. And I talk a little bit about leadership in the chapter. I end it with, if we're just looking at surface inclusion, meaning that we're just, oh, let's find a South Asian woman for our campaign, or let's make sure that we find someone who's LGBTQ in there, who's very flamboyant at that, you know, in the campaign. That is what we call surface level, basically. But if leadership doesn't change, if someone in the background isn't changing, then we will continue to have these surface type campaigns and inclusive categories, I think, in fashion marketing today. And that is why we see it come and then we see it go. Because there's no one in those offices that are making those final decisions, say, no, let's keep it in. You can ask Edward Enfield his struggles with being in Vogue and what he was trying to do, and why he left and started his own, because he was not able to continue those sorts of, or get away from those cultural gatekeeping attitudes that he was having in what he wanted to produce in Vogue UK. And I think these are a lot of stories that we have with marginalized people in these leadership positions when they were hired as a diversity sort of hire, then they get in and it was like, okay, we did our job. That's it, you know. And then there's no strategy, there's nothing behind it, they know nothing to do, and then that person feels out of place. Actually, one of my former students works for a beauty brand, and they created a cultural position. He has been in this position for years, and he got put in this cultural position, which he thought was amazing because he's very much into diversity and inclusion. and he says, I literally want to leave this job, they have nothing for me to do. And this is what we're finding as a challenge. So I hate that I've missed some of the conversation. I'm sure it was very enlightening.
It's all being recorded, so there's going to be a video.
Your timing's good, and what
It's
you were
perfect.
talking about is perfect to what we were talking about. We were just talking about making stuff and designing it. So.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you. So I will, in that case, say thank you to the first panelists, because we have a second panel as well. So thank you very much for your insights. I would like to suggest that you grab the refreshments. And then we will start in 5 minutes with the second panel, if everyone's happy with that. Is that okay? Thank you very much.
It was one of the first ones that I read.
Yes.